You're listening to the Mike on the Right podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Mike on the Right show. I am your host, Mike Neal, and yes, I am broadcasting from the heart of the heartland in central Indiana, the crossroads of America, the great Hoosier State. Thank you so much for listening. Please continue to like, share, subscribe, 5-star ratings. What you're doing is working. We've seen such tremendous growth in the show this last month, and it is because of you. Thank you so much for your support. I'm going to get right into this discussion because I don't know how long this is going to go. Could go a little short, could go a little long. But what we've experienced as Americans these last couple of weeks for sure, but especially in the last 7 days, 10 days, has been incredibly trying and incredibly tragic and incredibly heartbreaking and incredibly stressful and incredibly scary and incredibly emotional. And at some point, we as Americans, as conservatives, as Christians, as whatever walk of life you choose, that we cannot continue to accept the status quo in America because it does or doesn't align with our political viewpoint, or it does or doesn't align with whatever positions you might hold in your life. And this episode is going to be really tough for me. It's going to be very emotional because it hits at the heart and soul of what it means to be a follower of Jesus, to be a Christian conservative, and really just overall to be an American. If you're listening today and you don't espouse the positions that I hold, I'm so glad you're here. It's okay. Because this isn't going to just be from that perspective, but it's going to be from a Christian conservative perspective because that's who I am and that's the show. But it's not going to be this rough and tumble. And let me tell you kind of where I'm at. The title of this episode is called The Turning Point: America's Response to Political Violence. And really, some of it's not just political, even just like tangentially connected, like what's going on, what happened in Minneapolis. We talked about that a couple episodes ago, and what happened with the young Ukrainian girl that was needlessly murdered on a train. And then, of course, Charlie Kirk, what just happened, what is fresh in our mind. I was in downtown Indianapolis when, let's talk about it, when the Charlie Kirk news happened. I was running an event. It was a Christian, Jewish, Israeli, American event. Well, let me kind of get to this first. This episode is not about one person. It is, but of course, the catalyst is what happened with Charlie Kirk. And so I want to make sure that I frame this, that this is more than just the death of one man. It's about free speech. It's about courage. It's about the price of standing firm in truth. And that political violence is not just an attack on one person or one set of ideas or what have you. It's an attack against all of us. That is really true. And we can't sit here and pretend that this is just one side's issue or another, one ideology's issue or another, one race or another. We should be bolstered by data and facts, and we should seek to solve those issues unafraid of what people may say. Oh, you're a racist, or you're a bigot, or you're a xenophobe, or you're whatever. The data needs to lead us to the truth. So anyway, I for the Charlie Kirk stuff, I was at this event. I was running the event. I was directing the stage. It was a 3-day event. It was a wonderful event, and I remember looking at my phone while I'm kind of looking through the schedule, like getting the next speaker ready, and see this news that Charlie Kirk has been shot. And I go over to my my teammates that were on the team that I was leading, and said, "Hey, this just come across the wire." And no sooner than I said that, Michelle Bachman, who's the co-chair of the event that we were at, comes up no sooner than I had shared this with my friends and said, hey, we've got to stop this event. Charlie Kirk has been shot. We need to pray. And there was just this incredible moment of hundreds of people in a room praying for one man. But unbeknownst to us, the prayer and what happened was a catalyst of a shift and a movement in America. And so with that, I do want to talk about Charlie Kirk here at the beginning, who he was, the organization, in case you don't know, give you some background. And then I really want to get into the meat of this, which again is, what is our response as Americans? What is our response as Christians? What is our response as conservatives? What is our response as whatever side you're on? What's our response to political violence? Charlie Kirk was the founder of Turning Point USA. He started at 18 years old, I believe in his mom's garage, and grew it from this small garage dorm room idea into one of the largest conservative youth organizations in America. He spent years touring college campuses where no one else would go. Right? We talk all the time about the indoctrination in America in our schools, and college education is no different. We see that a lot. We're talking about that right now with Harvard and everything going on between President Trump and those colleges and universities. We know that that's a place that conservatives has kind of been like, just stay away from academia. One, we always get told we're dumb and not smart enough to debate those people because academics are smarter and better than us. But two, just the hostility and throwing people out and writing petitions because we universities, especially ones that have liberal seating within its ranks, are always looking to actually stop free debate and free speech. You can only have free debate and free speech if you fit in their box. And so he was going there, kind of standing in the lion's den. He had all kinds of media presence, podcasts, radio, TV, and he never let the conservative message go unheard. And it was so maddening for liberals and for media elites because they couldn't stop him. In this type of new media where we can, like on this show right now, nobody at MSNBC can stop me from having this conversation, though YouTube for about an hour and a half banned my YouTube channel yesterday. But that got fixed very quickly. But what I'm saying is that Charlie Kirk became who he was because, one, I believe that's what God wanted him to be. And two, there's no way for the mainstream media to stop him now because we can just buy a microphone and a program and have a camera and you're good to go. And he had such an encouraging way about him for young conservatives. You can't deny that. He was a man of faith. He quoted scripture regularly. He was open about his faith and that God's design for life, family, culture was something that he espoused. And he was more than a commentator. He was a movement builder, connecting donors and students and pastors, Christians or not, conservatives or not, and everyday Americans. And if you look at the type of events he had, there were people who agree with him, and there were people who disagree with him. And he never was afraid to discuss and debate. At his core, he was firm but kind. He could spar in a debate without degrading. And most people degraded him. There's video of that over and over and over. He could be sharp without being cruel. He was someone who believed in America's future, that young people were worth fighting for, and that the culture could be turned back to truth. He had controversies that oftentimes, in my opinion, were unfair. Kirk defended the Western civilization as the high point of human achievement, and I believe that America is exceptional, the greatest nation in the world, even with our struggles, even with our storied past. It is undeniable that God has blessed this nation in the way that it has been formed and that it operates. But that blessing could be pulled at any time, which is why this nation and its people are and need to turn back to God. Critics accused him of arrogance, but he rightly pointed out that freedom, prosperity, rule of law, and human rights come from God. That's his heritage. And that all are equal before God. But not all cultural systems produce liberty. We see what happens in the Middle East with people being stoned for certain positions or beliefs, or countries that do not, that are not open and free. You have to be a part of this church. You have to have this belief or what have you. I just saw that North Korea is executing more people than normal because they're watching TV and TV shows from places other than state-run news and media. This country is the greatest and the freest nation in the world and in history, and none shall ever parallel it. And he believed that. Other positions he had was that people called him that he was hateful, is because he kept saying that there were only two genders, looking at the science and looking at God's creation. And because he said that, he was hateful, which is bullcrap. He condemned medical experiments on children. This whole, 18-year-olds can't understand the loan that they signed, the student loan that they signed, but they can change their gender at 8. Both can't be true. Both can't be true. On DEI, he said that was not built on equality, but on resentment and division. This nation is built on equal opportunity, not equal outcome. And critics scream that he was racist, but it's because he exposed the DEI movement being hijacked, just like the Black Lives Matter movement. Does the phrase Black Lives Matter, is that a true statement? Of course it is. Is the organization and the incorporation and the political movement and the money that hijacked the movement? The phrase is one thing. The organization, they're separate things. That was hijacked, and it attempted, or even directly or indirectly, attempted to destroy the fabric of America. DEI has been the same. We're not against diversity. No one's against diversity. We're for merit and the best person getting a job and the best person, whatever that looks like, right? And DEI forces people to align with it again. So the words themselves are good. Together, conglomerated as this organization or movement or what have you, that's where the trouble stemmed. And he's said that time and time again. And he was all about free speech and debate. You can see that in videos anywhere. And that was the hatred that was against him. But it's because the reason that hatred was against Charlie Kirk is because he was effective. He had reached young people and they were turning away. And that was the worry, right? Academia was worried. They wanted to make sure he wasn't on college campuses. People have tried to ban his show and to blackmail him and to dox him and to whatever. And he's just the embodiment today of that, but that's been happening for years now. Ben Shapiro, other folks that are of note in this movement, all the time, people are trying to ban them from coming and speaking. And even older Americans, too. Myself, I'm 38. He was 31. So I'm 7 years older than him. So I would say he's at the end of the millennial age, kind of getting into, I listen to some of his things, not everything, because I can't listen to everything all the time. But the left saw him as dangerous because he planted seeds that would grow for decades. He could not be ignored, and he was shaping a future that terrified progressives, and that's why the hatred against him was and is so intense. So let's take that as kind of the culmination of what's been happening over the past several weeks, months, and years. Violence, political violence, seems to be increasing in America, but it is not confined to one ideology, and I want to be clear about this. There's a lot of people on my side who are saying, see, because the shooter, who I'm not going to name, because I don't want to give him any further airtime than he already's had, was involved with someone who was transgender and clearly was espousing leftist ideas and policies. Well, the same thing happened in Minneapolis with the murder of Catholic parishioners and children. But time and time and time again, evil and hatred and sin knows no party, no ideology owns it. no ideology is free from it. Because it's not necessarily rooted always in the idea. I'm not saying, now look, liberals will tell you that that their party and their side, that they're the tolerant ones, and that they're standing for the little guy, and they're standing for truth, and that's untrue, because there's montages after montages of saying, Gavin Newsom just not long ago said, I'm gonna punch conservatives in the mouth, like physically, that Trump is Hitler, and that the conservatives are Nazis, and people who espouse to the MAGA movement are Nazis. And those are people that just don't understand fascism who say that. But you say those hurtful words, those hurtful things, and it maddens conservatives, but it also deranges the folks that listen to those people, like the Maddows of the world, and Donna Brazile, and Joe Biden, who said that time and time again, and Gavin Newsom. So don't tell me that I'm not saying that the right doesn't have its problems and its issues, but do not tell me that the left is tolerant, that the left are the ones that are fighting for the little guy, because we have two examples in just a couple of weeks of far left extreme ideology radicalizing people to take matters into their own hands against free speech and freedom of religion. And take your pick. Tolerance is supposed to be universal. You can't be tolerant and then ban people from speaking at a university. You can't be tolerant and try to block people on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or their podcast or their written book. If you have to tell people you are tolerant, you are not tolerant, because tolerance, and let's define tolerance, that doesn't mean acceptance. I am a tolerant person because, one, I believe the Constitution provides each and every one of us the opportunity to say what we want as long as we are not harming and hurting others. You can believe in what you want. You can go to whatever church you want. You don't have to go to church. I encourage you to go to church. I would bet we're seeing some record attendance pieces this weekend in churches across America. And it's not because of Charlie Kirk, but Charlie Kirk is the symbol of violence and degradation in America today. The response to his death was amazing too. Vigils, candles, prayer, worship. We didn't see looting or arson or stealing or citywide chaos across America. The grief was taken out in the form of unity and not destruction. Now, again, there are some harsh words that people need to be careful of. But on the right side, some people are saying and being hateful and targeting and what have you. But all these folks that are celebrating his death, these academics and these news people and these whatever, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands. I've seen it the last 3 days. People who have posted, that's what he gets and that's what he deserves and all these things. They're getting fired from their jobs. Again, you have the freedom to express, but you do not have the freedom of to shy away from the consequence of your actions. It is gross and sick and wrong to be celebrating. I don't care. Again, it was gross and sick and wrong for those Minneapolis legislators who were Democrats. Let's move off Charlie for just a second, because what I want to make sure you understand that what I'm saying here has nothing to do with this huge attack on conservatives. There is an attack on conservatives. There is, and we're seeing it. But the Democratic legislators, in Minnesota that were assassinated and attacked, that is equally just as wrong. Because again, evil and mental health and mental sickness and derangement knows no party, knows no ideology. But we have to stop pretending that, it had nothing to do with the mutilation of your body and the taking of these medications that changed who you are. It had nothing to do with the hatefulness that was seeded from those things because you've tried to be something different than God created you to be. It's one thing to struggle. It's another thing to just full bore go into these things and to say that there's not a problem. And that's the thing. I am willing to 100% recognize our problems on the right. Because so many of us sometimes put politics before Jesus. When Jesus is the one and his teaching and the word of God should inform our politics, not the other way around. We have a problem with that in the conservative movement. We've got to be careful. But the left acts like they're so pure and so clean because they're for the little guy and you have to accept everybody and every ideology and all these things. It's like, no. And that's what Charlie stood for, and he got killed for it. He got killed for it. I'm going to say this as clear as I can. I believe that the death of Charlie Kirk, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, is this generation's JFK moment. For older generations, that assassination of JFK defined an era. And today, for young conservatives, the murder of Charlie Kirk may be that moment. People will remember where they heard the news. People that liked him, people that didn't like him. People that listened to him, people that didn't listen to him. Politicians to janitors to executives to doctors. Everyone in America knows who Charlie Kirk was now. JFK was young and charismatic and building a future, and he was cut down too soon. And Charlie Kirk was the same. He was building momentum and shaping a movement and rising in influence. And JFK was mourned across the spectrum. And there is a group of crazies on the left who are celebrating. But so many Democrats, even people who were opposed to it, who had radio shows and podcasts, who were direct competitors, not both in terms of listeners, but in terms of ideology, who have decried this 100% without equivocation. Not, well, I disagree with him on his politics, but I loved him. There's so many that aren't even saying that. It's just like, this is wrong. And we can't forget that. We can't let America be divided any further, any longer. So where do we go from here? As I begin to wrap up the show, I've not read most of my written monologue for today, or my bullet points. I don't read monologue. I read bullet points and kind of form the argument. I've just been I could go on another hour about this. I believe that in the end, the death of Charlie Kirk is a spark that will ignite not just a generation, but generations, both current and in the future. By killing Charlie Kirk, they have not silenced a movement. They have not silenced an ideology. They will unleash thousands more to speak and to carry the torch and to carry the light, just like JFK did. The torch passes to all of us, every single one of us. And it has nothing to do, well, again, he was a Christian conservative, so of course that's the foundation. But if you're listening to the sound of my voice today, you have a part to play in America's future. And Charlie embodied it, whether you agreed with him or not. It's about protecting the speech of every American, not the consequences of what they say, but the ability to say it. And that's who Charlie truly was. And that's what he really was doing. I've watched time and time, video and video and video, and people, of course, cut it to make it what they want to make it. But in its rawest and purest form, it was a time to debate and discuss with friends and with those who weren't friends, with folks who ideologically agree with us and not. And so if you're listening to the sound of my voice today, you have to pick up the mantle that free speech must be protected. That freedom of religion must be protected. It doesn't mean you have to get a podcast. That doesn't mean you have to write rah-rah conservative messages. Though if you are a conservative that has been quiet, you've got to consider doing so, because we're seeing the attack on our greatest voices. And now we have a charge to pick up the mantle of free speech and carry it. We must speak truth with grace and love, but we must never compromise. And the conservative movement has been pushed on and pushed on and pushed on to give ground and give ground and give ground. And we are living the slippery slope of 20 years ago on issues of marriage and gender and education and the degradation of religion. Now look, the Bible tells us, I want to bring in a faith component before I end the show. The Bible tells us that we will be hated for our following of Jesus. It doesn't get easier, my friends. It doesn't just get better. Yes, we have to continue to pray, but nobody, I saw a quote from J.D. Vance. I don't know when he said it, but I just saw it the other day. And it essentially says that no, we don't replace action with thoughts and prayers as Christians. A lot of, especially on the left, will tell us, they'll mock our thoughts and prayers because they think that's all we do. And sometimes people do, but thoughts and prayers are not a replacement for action. What we are doing through thoughts and prayers is we are remembering those that have been hurt or killed or whatever has happened to them, whatever you're thinking and praying about. We're beseeching the throne of God for comfort and kindness and direction. And then if God gives us a direction to go in that moment, then we must obey and we must go do that thing. And I believe through the murder of Charlie Kirk, we as Christian conservatives Americans, I'm speaking specifically to you right now as you're listening, we have to pick up the mantle of free speech. We have to pick up the mantle of fighting against radical gender ideology. We have to pick up against indoctrination of our children. We have to pick up the mantle of protecting our homes and our families and our way of life and our ideology and our culture and our freedom. And we've got to do it today. If you don't fit in that bubble, your mantle overall is to pick up the mantle of free speech. Even if you have a liberal ideology or an independent one, or you don't like to be labeled, and you don't want to be labeled, and you don't have to be labeled, you still have a mantle as an American to pick that up and protect that. It's not necessarily in that moment about Charlie Kirk's ideology, but about his willingness to discuss and debate and to protect free speech. That's what you're called to. So I hope I've covered both groups that may be listening. The Christian conservatives that are people like me, and those of you who are simply just Americans with another position or ideology, political or not, Christian or not, conservative or not, to pick up the mantle of free speech. Every believer, every patriot has a role to play, speaking truth boldly, but kindly and in love, and not backing down because it gets hard. And for those that have been celebrating these things, those of you who are rah-rahing, and I'm not saying anyone that listening to the show is doing that, so please, when I say you, but those in the world, in the United States, who are celebrating, Isaiah 5:20 says, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter." Our rights come from God, not a government. Government is to protect our God-given rights. That's the government's role. We have to continue to speak truth. And it's not just sitting there and reading scripture out loud and standing out on a road, on a street corner with a sign that said, "The end is nigh." It's also in the practical things. Christians a lot of times skip or miss the practical because potholes aren't holy, or my schools aren't holy. They're just public education. No, we have to own it. And that's Charlie's legacy. Charlie lived his truth. He was hated because he bore witness to Christ and to truth. And the reason people hated him is because he hated that he was saying it, and they were just labeling it as, again, the Bible tells us that we're going to be hated for the truth that we stand for. But blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sakes. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven, Matthew 5:10. And like Paul, beaten and jailed for the gospel, Kirk endured hatred and lies and threats and ultimately death. He was a modern witness to what it means to be hated for righteousness. And many of us endure that all the time. But if you're listening to me today, we have not had to give the ultimate sacrifice for our children, our country, our friends, our family, our spouses. And we should not be afraid to do so. But by picking up the mantle and saying that there are too many of us to take out, that's how we protect each other. By standing up and saying, we're not going to let this happen in our schools anymore, our kids anymore, our churches anymore, our neighborhoods anymore. When all of us pick up the mantle, we reduce the ability for the enemy and for those who would seek to kill and destroy from succeeding. We must pick up the mantle to be salt, to preserve truth, the light to pierce the darkness. Salt and light, that is what we are called to be. That is who we are called to be. And so our response to political violence is to pray and to act. I've talked about the need in a previous episode for further investment in mental health services and potentially institutionalized services. That's one. More Christians and conservatives need to stand up and run for office, or to engage in their parent-teacher organization, or to engage with the school board, or to engage with superintendents in schools, or to engage with your city and town council. Again, I'm not saying you have to be political in the political sense, but if Jesus truly informs your politics, then you are under assault simply for living it. And God didn't tell us it was going to be easy. He said in ways it was going to be harder. I'm not saying that things can't get better for Americans and Christians. But we all know what the Bible says when the end times come. But that doesn't mean we stop the battle and the fight. Our response has to be prayer, not riots. Unity, not chaos. Grace, not hatred. That's what God calls us to. But he doesn't call us to inaction. But we can do so. Grace and truth, firmness and kindness. But we stand on our principles, on the foundation and the rock of Jesus, and we do not move from those principles. There are certainly stylistic things, and I talked about this before. Policies on top of principles. The principles never change. The policies are informed by the principles. You need to make sure you vote. You need to make sure you know who your legislators are. You need to make sure you're writing. Again, those things don't make you political. They make you American. And we have a duty to do that. We have a duty to speak up. And if each parent would pick up that mantle just simply for their family and kids, and that spread all across the land, how effective the next generation would be, how changed the next generation would be. We can change it. We've not lost. God tells us that the victory has already been won. And of course, there's all kinds of prophecy that has to come true and come alive. But while we are here, we are called to be salt and to be light. I've gone long. Thank you so much for listening today. Thank you so much for your support. Again, 5 stars, shares, ratings. This is a really important topic, and more people need to hear it. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. God bless the family of Charlie Kirk. God bless the family of the Ukrainian girl who was murdered. God bless all of those families who lost loved ones in Minneapolis. God bless the families of the legislators in Minnesota. God bless each and every one of us. Have a great week.